People love asking about the secret. They lean in, lower their voice, and wait for some hidden sentence that only a few are allowed to hear. They imagine wealth as a locked room and assume that somewhere, somehow, a special key was handed to the lucky ones while everyone else was kept outside. But here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no secret vault, no hidden switch, no magic shortcut. What there is, and what most people refuse to accept, is patience. And patience is boring. It doesn't trend, it doesn't go viral, it doesn't give you a rush. In a world addicted to speed, patience feels like standing still. That's why people miss it. Most people are listening for a shout, while the real answer speaks in a whisper. They chase whatever is loud, shiny, and urgent, while the quiet thing sits in the corner doing its work steadily year after year unnoticed. That quiet thing is compounding, and compounding doesn't care about excitement. It only responds to time and consistency. Today, I want to talk about one of the most misunderstood parts of this entire picture, a topic that makes people uncomfortable the moment it comes up, something that has caused real damage in countless lives, and yet, when properly understood, has helped build some of the strongest financial foundations in history. I'm talking about debt. Now, I can already feel the resistance. People picture debt as a chain, something cold and heavy wrapped around their ankles. And for most people, that picture is accurate. They borrow to buy things that immediately start losing value, cars that depreciate as soon as they leave the showroom, gadgets that are outdated within a year, vacations that end, memories that fade while the bill stays behind. That kind of debt isn't neutral. It quietly works against you. When you borrow for consumption, you're not improving your future, you're selling it. You're asking tomorrow's income to pay for yesterday's pleasure. The experience is gone, but the obligation remains. That's why so many people feel like they're running harder every year and still going nowhere. They're trying to move forward while dragging the past behind them. This is what turns debt into a poverty trap. But people who build lasting wealth see something different. They don't see debt as a lifestyle upgrade. They see it as a tool. And like any powerful tool, it can either build or destroy depending on how it's used. Here's something worth noticing. Banks are extremely eager to lend you money for consumption. New car? Easy approval. Credit cards for shopping and dining? No problem. Vacations, electronics, furniture? They'll happily help. But try borrowing money to buy something that produces income, something that pays you every month, and suddenly the process changes. Now they want proof, history, stability, a plan. That difference tells you everything about how debt actually works. Early in life, long before investing became my full-time focus, I learned this lesson in a simple, almost accidental way. A friend and I scraped together a small amount of money and bought a used pinball machine. Nothing fancy. It worked, though. We placed it in a local shop and agreed to split the earnings. The first day, it made a few dollars. Now, that money could have been spent immediately. A meal, a movie, something fun but temporary. Instead, we did something boring. We reinvested it. We bought another machine, then another. Each one sat quietly in a corner, working all day without complaints. That's when a fundamental idea became clear. Money used to create more money behaves very differently from money used to disappear. No debt was involved at that stage, but the principle was already there. Capital, when directed toward something productive, starts to multiply effort. When directed toward consumption, it simply vanishes. Debt doesn't change this truth, it only magnifies it. If debt is attached to waste, it accelerates ruin. If it's attached to productivity, it accelerates growth. The danger is not the tool itself. The danger is using it without understanding what you're building. Most people don't fail financially because they lack intelligence. They fail because they confuse activity with progress. They mistake spending for success. They borrow to look rich instead of borrowing carefully and rarely to become secure. In the next part, we'll break this down with a simple analogy that shows exactly how productive debt works, why it can multiply results, and why it must always be handled with discipline and respect, because fire can cook your food or burn your house down. The difference is never the fire, it's how you use it. To really understand debt, it helps to step away from finance for a moment and think in simpler terms. Money can make things confusing, but the principle itself is old, natural, and easy to grasp once you see it clearly. So imagine this. You are a farmer. You own 1 acre of good fertile land. That land represents your savings, your equity, your hard-earned capital. You worked for it, protected it, and you know what it can produce. With the seed you already have, you can plant that single acre. It will feed your family. Maybe you'll even have a little extra to sell. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. You're surviving on your own effort. Now something interesting happens. The farmer next door is getting old. He doesn't want to farm anymore, but he's not selling his land. Instead, he offers to rent you his 9 additional acres for a fair price for the season. Suddenly, you have access to 10 acres instead of one. There's just one problem. You don't have enough seed to plant all that land. Your savings are tied up in the acre you already own and the seed you've already prepared. This is where borrowing enters the picture, not as a shortcut, but as a bridge. You go to the seed merchant and explain your situation. You show him that you already own land, that you know how to farm, and that you've successfully produced crops before. You don't ask for food. You don't ask for luxury. You ask for seed. You say, lend me seed for the additional acres. I'll repay you from the harvest with interest. If you're a skilled farmer, if the soil is healthy and the conditions are reasonable, something powerful happens. You harvest 10 acres instead of 1. You repay the seed merchant exactly what he lent you, plus the agreed upon interest. And what remains is far greater than what you could have produced alone. That is productive debt. You didn't borrow to consume, you borrowed to multiply effort. The entire system works because of one critical idea, the spread. The spread is the difference between what the asset produces and what the debt costs. If the borrowed seed costs you 5%, but your land produces a 15% return, that 10% difference belongs to you. It wasn't created by luck. It was created by skill, discipline, and correct use of leverage. This same principle shows up again and again in the real world. Think about rental real estate. Someone puts down a reasonable amount of their own money and borrows the rest. The tenants pay rent. That rent covers the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Over time, the loan balance shrinks. The property remains. Equity builds quietly month after month. Eventually, the debt disappears, but the income doesn't. The same idea applies to buying a strong business. If you can borrow money at a low cost to acquire a business that reliably earns far more than that cost, the difference compounds in your favor. Over time, the debt becomes smaller and the asset continues producing. But here's the part that cannot be ignored. Debt amplifies everything. If the harvest is strong, results multiply. If the harvest fails, the obligation remains. Go back to the farmer. If there is a drought, if pests destroy the crops, or if prices collapse, the seed merchant still expects repayment. If the farmer had only planted his own acre, it would be a bad year, but survivable. With borrowed seed across 9 extra acres, failure can mean losing everything. This is why debt deserves respect. Borrowing doesn't forgive mistakes. It punishes them. It removes your margin for error. That's why using debt for speculation, betting on price increases instead of cash-producing assets, is so dangerous. When people borrow money hoping something will go up in value, they're not investing. They're gambling with a timer attached. Markets can stay irrational longer than most people can stay solvent. This is why survival always comes before return. It doesn't matter how right you are in the long run if you're forced out in the short run. Debt should only be used when the outcome is highly probable, not merely possible. There's a simple idea that separates people who survive financial storms from those who are wiped out by them. It's not intelligence, it's not income, it's not even opportunity. It's margin of safety. Margin of safety is the space between you and disaster. It's the buffer that allows mistakes, bad luck, and unexpected events to occur without destroying everything you've built. In engineering, bridges aren't designed to hold only the weight they expect. They're built to carry far more. That extra capacity is what keeps the bridge standing when something goes wrong. Your financial life needs the same design. Most people live at the edge of their limits. If their income rises, their lifestyle rises faster. When lenders say, you qualify for this much, they treat that number as a target instead of a warning. They borrow to the maximum, leaving no room for error. When life inevitably delivers a surprise, and it always does, there's nowhere to absorb the shock. That's when small problems turn into crises. A roof needs repair. A tenant moves out, a car breaks down, a business has a slow quarter. None of these events are rare. They're normal. But without margin of safety, normal problems become catastrophic. People are forced to sell good assets at terrible prices, borrow at high interest just to survive, or abandon long-term plans entirely. Margin of safety turns chaos into inconvenience. This is why living below your means is not old-fashioned advice. It's foundational. It's the quiet discipline that makes everything else possible. Saving isn't about deprivation. It's about control. It gives you options. It buys you time. And time is the most valuable asset you will ever own. This is also why consumption debt is so destructive. High interest debt doesn't just slow progress, it actively works against you. It's compounding in reverse. Every month it pulls you backward while you're trying to move forward. You cannot build wealth while digging a hole. Before debt can ever be used productively, toxic debt must be eliminated. Credit cards used for lifestyle spending, loans for things that lose value. These are not tools, they are leaks, and no amount of income can fill a bucket full of holes. Once stability is built, real savings, no D-debt, steady cash flow, the way you see opportunities changes. You stop reacting emotionally. You start thinking structurally. You run numbers. You ask boring questions. You wait. Waiting is a skill most people never develop. They confuse movement with progress. They feel productive when they're busy, even if they're moving in the wrong direction. But real progress often feels slow, uneventful, almost invisible. That's why so few people stick with it long enough to see results. This is where the concept of the snowball becomes useful. You start with a small ball of capital, your savings. At first, it grows slowly. You might feel discouraged. It doesn't seem impressive. But with each turn, it gathers a little more. Over time, as it gets larger, each rotation adds more than the last. Growth accelerates not because you're working harder, but because the system is working for you. Debt, when used correctly, is like a gentle push behind that snowball. Not a kick, not a shove, just steady pressure. It doesn't replace the hill, that's time. It doesn't replace the snow, that's quality assets. It simply makes each rotation slightly more powerful. But here's the part people miss. If the hill is short or the ground is rocky, leverage doesn't help. It makes things worse. Using debt without time, stability, and quality assets is like pushing a snowball toward a cliff. The push doesn't build momentum, it guarantees destruction. That's why patience matters more than boldness. The goal is not to get rich quickly. The goal is to become unbreakable, to build a financial structure strong enough to absorb shocks, adapt, and continue. Speed comes later, if at all. Survival always comes first. When people talk about wealth, they usually picture visible things: big houses, expensive cars, status symbols that announce success to the outside world. But those things miss the point. Real wealth is rarely loud. It's quiet, durable, and often invisible to everyone except the person who built it. True wealth is about content. Uity. It's about creating a financial structure that doesn't collapse the moment life becomes uncomfortable. It's about building something strong enough to support not just you, but the people who come after you, not to spoil them, not to remove effort from their lives, but to give them stability and options. This is where disciplined use of assets and carefully managed debt becomes generational. The process never starts big. It starts small and unremarkable. One asset, one investment, something boring but reliable. You manage it well. You let time do its work. You resist the urge to rush. Over years, equity builds quietly. Income becomes more predictable. Risk becomes easier to manage. Eventually, that equity becomes seed capital for the next step, not through reckless borrowing, but through controlled expansion. You don't sell strong assets to chase new ones. You build on top of what already works. Each new step is supported by the last. This is how financial systems become resilient instead of fragile. Children raised around this process absorb lessons without formal teaching. They see money treated as a tool, not a toy. They learn that borrowing is for building, not showing off. They understand patience, restraint, and long-term thinking because they watch it in action. That mindset is the real inheritance. Assets can be lost. Markets can change. But a disciplined way of thinking survives across generations. It teaches how to rebuild if necessary. It creates confidence. Why? Without arrogance and ambition, without recklessness, this path is slow by design. There are no shortcuts, no dramatic turning points. Anyone promising instant results is selling excitement, not stability. And excitement is usually expensive. The first and best investment is always yourself. Skills, knowledge, health, character. These are assets that compound in ways money cannot. They increase your earning power and your judgment. They form the base upon which everything else rests. Financial capital grows best when supported by strong human capital. Only after that foundation is in place does leverage deserve consideration. And even then, it should feel calm, structured, conservative. If using debt feels thrilling, something is wrong. Productive leverage feels almost boring. It's designed to work quietly in the background, not dominate your attention. Used this way, debt becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool. Like a sharp blade or heavy machinery, dangerous when misused, powerful when respected. It demands discipline, planning, and humility. The world will always encourage urgency. News cycles scream for attention. Trends promise fast rewards. Fear and greed push people toward rushed decisions. But wealth is built by ignoring noise and respecting fundamentals. Live below your means, protect your margin of safety, acquire real income-producing assets. Let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. Generational wealth isn't about luxury, it's about freedom. Freedom to choose work for meaning, not desperation. Freedom to handle setbacks without panic. Freedom to be generous, patient, and long-term focused. Think of it like planting a tree. You may never sit in its full shade. You may never see how tall it grows, but you plant it anyway, in good soil, and you protect it through its early years, not for applause, but for continuity. When debt is used wisely over time, it can help you plant not just one tree, but an entire grove. Different assets, different income streams, supporting one another, a system that grows stronger as it ages. So don't fear debt and don't worship it. Learn it, respect it, use it rarely and deliberately. Build your foundation first. Become financially stable, patient, and disciplined. And when the right opportunity appears, clear, durable, and well within your margin of safety, you won't need excitement or persuasion. You'll act quietly, not like a gambler chasing a win, but like a builder adding one more solid brick to a structure meant to stand for generations.